How do we help our children not to define themselves based on how others see them? How do we help children to see their self-view? One of the most important things that a parent can do for a child is raise them with self-esteem. Children with self-esteem are equipped with one of the most important tools they need to go far in life, to be able to handle any situation and bounce back from any setback. In this episode, we continue our focus on self-esteem, answering this question as well as 3 practical ways to raise children with self-esteem. Raising children in general is not easy. Throw in the desire to have passionate and committed Jews. Now that's next level hard. With weekly episodes on our parenting hierarchy, you will find the answers to your biggest parenting questions and gain the best practices you need to raise the children the way you want, to raise the Jews next door. So let's get right into our first question. The answer to the first question is simple but profound. Our first series on this podcast was all about building a relationship with our children. And the reason for that was because that is the most fundamental thing that we can do to be a good parent. Along with that relationship building is knowing our children's real interests, like really, really knowing. And the way to use that to help build their self-esteem is by leaning into their interests and giving them opportunities to explore those interests, to experience them, to do them, to feel good about them, giving them a space to shine in. So for example, if your child, you're noticing they really like sports, so give them the opportunity to do as much sports as they can. Or if you have a child who's really into art or into drama, give them the opportunity to explore that. Someone who's musical, great. Give them the opportunity to really, really go and explore it and find the area within whatever it is that's interesting for them that they shine in. And if after exploring it a little bit, it's not working, okay, so it's fine. So switch to something else, because every child has something they're interested in and they could have multiple interests. And the more opportunities, the more experiences we give them, the more opportunities are for them to shine. Another way for us to build up our child's self-esteem is the way we respond to a child asking us for help with something. And if it's something that we know that they can do, if it's something that we know they can do, then when this happens, there's a very specific response we need to do in order in order for us to build up our child's self-esteem. So for example, let's say our child asks us, can you put my blanket on at nighttime, right before bed? Or they say, they come home from school and you say, you remind them, okay, it's time to do homework. And they ask you to help them do the homework. And in each of these scenarios, they're capable of doing it. Obviously, it depends on the age of your children. But the way we need to respond in those types of situations is you need to have an action plus a verbal response. So first, the answer is, you could put on your blanket. You can do that homework. I know you're great at math. Or, oh, you want a cup of water? Sure, you can do it. And then you need to have the verbal response of, I know you can do this. You don't need me. I believe in you. By doing this, so first of all, if you just have the action of saying no without the verbal, so it sounds a little evil. But when you add in that verbal component at the end, you're really saying to your child, I truly believe in you. And that really strengthens the child. And by doing this, by going through this type of exercise with your child, you're really saying to them, you're amazing. You're great. You don't need me to help you with something like this. And sometimes a child wants to get into negotiations, and I wouldn't ever call children terrorists. Some people might, and some people would say there's no negotiations with terrorists. I wouldn't say that applies to children, but there is the concept of that we don't negotiate, meaning you have to hold firm to it. You have to hold your children to the standards that they're able to do, because the more that we don't hold them to those standards, it's like it's babying them. And it's saying to them, I don't believe in you. Sure, I'll get you water when there's, the water's right there, or I'll pour the milk for you when you're capable of doing these things. So by doing that, you're basically saying to the child, yeah, I'm nervous if you're going to do it. I'm not so sure you're not going to spill the milk. What that's saying to the child is it's unfortunately a very powerful statement of, I'm not sure if I fully believe in you. And then if you don't believe in your child, then how can we expect them to believe in themselves? How can we expect them to have self-esteem? Now, within this idea of having, the action plus the verbal response, it's really, really important in the ideal sense that the husband and the wife are on the same page. The reason is because if let's say, let's say the wife is very strong on it and the husband is, this fun loving person, or the opposite. So then the children are going to see right through that. They're going to know that they can just go to, they can go to mommy or Ima, or they can go to Abba or daddy or Tati. They can go and they can get away with it. No problem. And then they'll get whatever they want. And therefore they know, I don't really need to do it, or I don't even need to ask that other parent anymore because I'm going to get it no matter what. Now, on to the second idea of ways to raise our children's self-esteem. Number 2 is the way we approach the amount of praises, or the way we praise our children. So whenever we have opportunities to praise our children, so we have to really be very careful. We really have to weigh the types of praises we give. What do I mean? If it's something that is age appropriate, that it's an area that they are working on, and it's an area of growth for them, then that's great. And you recognize it. You recognize that they're pushing hard. They're trying to make strides in this area. Amazing. But, and listen very carefully, this is such an important point. If it's beneath them, if it's something that's not really age appropriate, it's degrading. Then complimenting them is actually not a compliment, right? You're basically like, for example, let's say you say to your, to your 6-year-old, or to, your 6-year-old, wow, I am so proud of you for getting your cup of water. Or let's say you say to your 8-year-old, I'm so impressed that you were able to get dressed by yourself. So it's demeaning, right? Unless if for this particular child, it is a struggle for them, then it's basically saying to them, yeah, you're not really capable of that. Or, this is something that's not really fitting for you. There's a Maharal that says that, that within the pasuk of Mi Yimalel Gevuros Hashem, that who can possibly say the Gevuros, the praises of Hashem, who can say that the incredible things about Hashem, is because everything we say about Hashem is minimalistic. Because who are we to be saying something nice about Hashem? He's perfect. He doesn't need us. And it's the same thing for our children. If it's an area of growth, it's fitting. It's great. But if it's not, it's beneath them. And then they start to wonder, do you think that that's where I'm holding? Because I know that that's beneath me. But if my parents saying it to me, then maybe that's what they think of me. And if again, going back to what we said before, if our children think that that's what we think of them, then what are they going to think about themselves? It's going to make them feel less capable than they are. And then the compliment actually ends up lowering them. If it's something that they could feel really proud of, then it could be something really real. But if not, then it's better to avoid it. The third way to raise a child's self-esteem is actually shifting, right? Now, so the first two ideas, we really spoke about the positive component. This third idea is, what if a child feels like they're a failure? What if they express that to you? What if they say, I'm such a failure, or I know I'm bad at that. I always make mistakes. So then it's really important for us to get a very, very fundamental message through to our children, which is that there's no one who doesn't make mistakes. In fact, the best people make mistakes. We build them through recognizing their mistakes. That's the approach. The approach is to take our children through a process of building them through the mistakes, meaning help them realize that failure is a good thing. As the famous saying of Chazal goes, Sheva yipol tzadik v'kam. A tzaddik fell 7 times, and the fact that he keeps getting up, that's what's so impressive. That's what makes them into a tzaddik. So recognizing the mistakes and yet still going, that is what makes a tzaddik amazing. That's how we learn how to improve. So for our children, it's so important for us to help them to realize that that's a part of life. And while social media doesn't want us to think it's a part of life, social media wants us to think that we need to be perfect. That's not true. We have to normalize that it is okay to have challenges. And through normalizing it, it can make children feel so much better about themselves. There's a book called The Carrot Principle book. And in there describes that there was this CEO who used to hand every single employee who said that they made a mistake $100. because this CEO got it. He knew that the only way for us to grow and for this company to be the best it can possibly be is through admitting and recognizing I made a mistake, but I'm going to grow. I'm not going to let that mistake bring me down and characterize me. I'm going to grow from that. And that's what we really need to do with our children. We really need to help our children to see that it is so normal to make mistakes. It's so normal to have anxiety. So many people have it. It's so normal to be, say, taking medicine for something. That's okay. We're not meant to be perfect. We're meant to be fixing ourselves. We come into this world imperfect, and that is okay. Our job as parents is to help our children feel normal despite their challenges, because that is normal. And maybe just one last point is that in school, when we talk about self-esteem, like let's say you're listening to this right now as you're getting report cards from your child's school, or your child came home with a test. So it's so important for us to not focus on the grades. Really, 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 the focusing on the grade tells our child that you should not have a growth mindset. You should have a fixed mindset. There's a famous book all about this. And we need to help our children to be able to have a growth mindset, to see that it's all about their efforts. The grade, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't really matter. It's just, do they put the efforts in? If they put their best efforts forth, even if they got a bad grade, then they need the praise. They need the compliment. And that is age appropriate, because it's something they're struggling through, but it's okay. It's good. It's normal. They put in their efforts. That's all we can ask of anyone ever, is to put their best efforts forth. And if this area is not for them, okay, so maybe this is an area that's going to be a struggle for them. But are they going to benefit from a parent coming to them and saying, how did you get this grade? Where were the other 5 points? How is that going to make a child feel? It's going to make them feel horrible. So if we're talking about building up our children, we need to think about their efforts, not about their grades. So just to summarize what we've spoken about, we started off with the idea about leaning into our child's interests. And that is a really, really strong way to see what they're interested in and give them the areas to shine. We spoke about the idea about the way we respond to our children when they're asking us for something that we know they can do, and to not give in, to not help them with things that we know they can do, but rather to push them and to show them, I believe in you. And that's the very important message. We spoke about the idea of the praising, the way we praise our children, being very careful and make sure it's something specifically age appropriate, that it's an area that they're working on. And then it's fitting to give a nice compliment, recognizing that they pushed hard, that they made some growth. But if it's beneath them, it's not a compliment. It's demeaning to them, and it really pulls down their self-esteem. And the last thing we spoke about is this concept of failure, of making mistakes, and for us to normalize making mistakes, to normalize the failure, and that it's okay. And within grades specifically, to not look at the grade, but to look at the efforts. I hope this episode was helpful for you. If it was, please feel free to reach out at yair@genoff.org. Let me know. Let me know what was most helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at @GenOffParenting, Twitter at Yair Menchel, and looking forward to another amazing episode with you next week.